My stepmother evicted me for her son's family. She had no idea I was secretly saving the house the day my stepmother told me to leave my own home. She looked completely calm. There was no shouting. No argument. No warning. She simply placed a cardboard box on the kitchen table, looked at me and said, "Emily, you have until Friday to move out." For several seconds I couldn't respond. I honestly thought I had misunderstood her. Move out where? She avoided my eyes. My son and his family need the house. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the situation was so unbelievable that my mind didn't know how else to react. I had lived in that house for almost 15 years. I had paid bills, repaired things, helped with expenses, and spent years taking care of the property. And for the last 2 years, I had been quietly making payments toward a mortgage problem that almost nobody knew about. My stepmother had no idea. She thought I was simply the quiet daughter who happened to live there. She had no idea that I had secretly paid around $12,000 toward the mortgage. And 2 days after she forced me to leave, I made one phone call that changed everything. My name is Emily Carter. When I was 12 years old, my father married a woman named Linda. At first, Linda and I actually got along surprisingly well. She wasn't my mother, and I never expected her to replace my mother. But she tried. She helped me with school projects, came to my basketball games, and even taught me how to cook some of my father's favorite meals. For years I believed we were a real family. Then my father passed away. Everything changed. The house became the center of almost every difficult conversation. My father had owned the property before he died. It wasn't an enormous mansion, but it was a beautiful old house with 4 bedrooms, a large garden, and a detached garage. Most importantly, it contained almost every memory I had of my father. After his death, Linda remained there. I moved away for college, but I returned whenever I could. After graduation, I found a job nearby and eventually moved back into the house. For a while, everything seemed normal. Linda seemed happy to have me there. At least that's what I thought. Then her son, Daniel, started having financial problems. Daniel was Linda's biological son from a previous relationship. He was married and had 2 children. One afternoon, Linda called me into the living room. "Emily, Daniel needs help." I immediately knew what she meant. "How much?" She sighed. "His family needs somewhere to stay." I looked at her. "You mean temporarily?" "Of course." I agreed. Daniel and his family moved into the guest area of the house. I thought it would last a few months. But a few months became a year. Then another year. And slowly the house stopped feeling like the home I remembered. Daniel's family needed more space. There were more people in the kitchen. More noise. More bills. More disagreements. But I tried to stay patient. Then one evening I noticed something that nobody else seemed to care about. The house had a mortgage problem. My father had left behind financial obligations connected to the property. Linda had been making the minimum payments, but over time, expenses and interest had accumulated. One evening I found a letter from the bank on the kitchen counter. It wasn't addressed to me, but I immediately understood that something was wrong. The property was at risk if the outstanding balance wasn't properly handled. I confronted Linda. "Why didn't you tell me?" She became defensive. "I have everything under control." "No, you don't." She walked away. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father. He had spent years restoring that house. Every room contained something he had built or repaired. The wooden shelves in the living room were made by him. The workbench in the garage was made by him. Even the garden fence had been repaired by his own hands. I couldn't imagine watching the house disappear because nobody was willing to deal with the financial problem. So I made a decision. I would help, but I wouldn't announce it. I contacted the bank and learned how I could contribute toward the outstanding amount. Over the next 2 years, I used my savings and some bonuses from work to make payments. Eventually, I had contributed around $12,000 toward the mortgage. I didn't tell Linda. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't even tell my closest friends. I wasn't looking for praise. I simply wanted to protect the house. I believed family helped each other without keeping score. I had no idea how badly that belief was about to be tested. One Monday morning, Linda asked me to sit down. Daniel was there. His wife was there too. Immediately I knew something was wrong. Linda folded her hands and said, "Emily, we've made a decision." Daniel looked uncomfortable. Linda continued, "Daniel's family needs more space." I nodded. Okay. We've decided they should have the main part of the house. I stared at her. And where would I go? Linda answered without hesitation. You'll need to find somewhere else. The room became completely silent. I looked at Daniel. He wouldn't look at me. Then I looked back at Linda. You're asking me to leave? Yes. After everything I've done here? Linda sighed. Emily, you're an adult. You can start your own life. Those words hurt more than I expected. For years I had considered this house my home. I had helped maintain it. I had contributed financially. And now I was being treated as though I was simply taking up space. So I didn't scream. I didn't insult anyone. I simply asked, when? Friday. I stood up. Fine. Linda looked surprised. She probably expected an argument. But I didn't give her one. I went upstairs and started packing. As I folded my clothes, I looked around my room. There were photographs of my father. A bookshelf he had built. A small lamp he had repaired when I was a child. I suddenly realized something. They could ask me to leave. But they couldn't erase everything I had done. And I knew something they didn't know. The financial records existed. The bank knew. The payment history existed. And the truth would eventually come out. By Friday morning, most of my belongings were packed. Linda stood in the hallway watching me. You're really leaving? I looked at her. You asked me to. She didn't respond. Downstairs, Daniel's children were excited about getting more space. I didn't blame them. They were children. They didn't understand what was happening. Before I left, I walked through the house one last time. The kitchen. The living room. My father's workshop. The garden. I stood in the doorway of the workshop for several minutes. Then I took out my phone. I called the bank. Hello. I need to confirm the current status of the property. The representative asked for my information. I provided it. Then she said something that gave me a strange sense of relief. Miss Carter, your account is fully up to date. I closed my eyes. Thank you. I ended the call. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply disappointed. I picked up my suitcase and left. 2 days later my phone rang. It was Daniel. Emily, can we talk? Sure. His voice sounded nervous. What did you do before you left? I frowned. Nothing. The bank called. My heart skipped for a moment. What did they say? They said there's paperwork connected to the property that needs clarification. I immediately understood. The payments I had been making were recorded. Daniel continued. Linda says she doesn't know anything about it. I remained silent. Then he asked, Emily, is your name connected to those payments? Yes. How much have you paid? I hesitated. About $12,000. There was complete silence. 12,000. Approximately. Why? I looked out the window of my apartment. Because Dad worked hard for that house. Daniel sounded confused. You've been paying the mortgage? Yes. Why didn't you tell us? Because I wasn't doing it for recognition. Daniel didn't answer. Then he said quietly, I think Linda made a huge mistake. The next afternoon we met at a small cafe. Linda arrived first. She looked upset. Daniel sat beside her. I sat across from them. Linda immediately said, You should have told me about the payments. I looked at her. You should have told me about the financial problems. She had no answer. Daniel finally spoke. Mom, why did you ask Emily to leave? Linda looked at him. Because your family needed the space. Daniel shook his head. We never asked her to leave. Linda looked confused. His wife quietly added, We didn't want Emily gone. That was the moment I realized something important. Linda had made a decision on behalf of everyone. She believed giving Daniel's family more space required removing me. But nobody had actually asked her to do that. She had created a family conflict based on an assumption. I placed a folder on the table. Linda looked at it. What is that? Copies of the payment records. She opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, payment confirmations, and other financial documents. Her expression changed. She looked at me. You really paid this? Yes. You could have lost all that money. I know. Why? I looked directly at her. Because I thought we were family. Linda lowered her eyes. For the first time in years she looked genuinely ashamed. But there was still something she didn't know. After my father's death, There had been legal documents connected to the property. I had discovered them while helping organize his papers. The house wasn't simply a property that one person could make every decision about without considering the existing ownership and financial arrangements. I had never used that information against Linda. I didn't want a legal fight. I didn't want revenge. I simply wanted everyone to understand the facts. So I contacted the attorney who had handled my father's estate. We arranged a meeting. The attorney carefully explained the situation to all of us. There were responsibilities that needed to be addressed. There were financial arrangements that needed to be documented. And there were decisions that couldn't simply be made without everyone understanding the consequences. For the first time, our family sat around one table and discussed money honestly. No secrets. No assumptions. No emotional decisions. The attorney helped us create a practical arrangement. Daniel's family could remain in the guest area. Linda could stay in her section. And I could retain my financial and legal interest in the property. Everyone would contribute according to what they could reasonably afford. Most importantly, everything would be written down. No one would ever again be told to leave simply because somebody made a decision without discussing it. A week later, Linda came to my apartment. She brought a small box. Inside was one of my father's old watches. "I found this in the workshop," she said. I smiled. I thought it was lost. Linda sat down. "I owe you an apology." I didn't say anything. She continued. "When Daniel started struggling, I became obsessed with protecting him. I understand." "No," she said softly. "I don't think you do." She looked down at the watch. "I convinced myself that helping my son meant pushing you aside." She paused. "And I forgot that you were my family too." I looked at her. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" She took a breath. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you would say no." I smiled sadly. "You never gave me the chance." Linda nodded. "You're right." Then she said something I never expected. "I want you to come home." I didn't answer immediately. The word, home, suddenly felt complicated. For years I had believed home was a place. Now I understood that home was something people had to create together. So I didn't move back immediately. Instead, I told Linda that if we were going to rebuild our relationship, there had to be boundaries. Clear financial responsibilities. Respect for private spaces. Honest conversations. And no more decisions made behind someone's back. Linda agreed. Daniel agreed. His wife agreed. Slowly things began to change. Daniel found a better job. His family started contributing toward the household expenses. Linda became more independent and started volunteering at a local community center. And I began restoring my father's workshop. One Saturday morning, Daniel's daughter walked into the workshop. "Emily." I turned around. "Yes. Can you teach me how to build something?" I smiled. "What do you want to build?" "A little bookshelf." I looked at the old tools hanging on the wall. "Your grandfather would have loved that." She smiled. And for the first time in a long time, the house felt like my father's home again. Looking back, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had reacted differently. What if I had screamed? What if I had insulted Linda? What if I had immediately tried to destroy everything she had built? Maybe I would have felt satisfied for a moment. But I might have lost my family forever. Instead, I chose patience. I chose facts over anger. And most importantly, I chose communication. Linda made a serious mistake when she asked me to leave. But my biggest mistake would have been believing that revenge was the only way to respond. 2 years earlier, I had quietly paid $12,000 toward the mortgage because I wanted to protect my father's home. 2 days after being evicted, I could have used that information to embarrass everyone. Instead, I used it to bring the truth into the open. Today the house is still standing. The garden is still there. My father's workshop is still full of his old tools. And most Sundays our family sits around the same dining table for dinner. Things aren't perfect. Families rarely are. But now when there's a problem we talk about it. Because I've learned something I wish I had understood years ago. Being family doesn't mean everyone will always treat you fairly. Sometimes people make selfish decisions. Sometimes fear makes people act badly. And sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who disappoint you. But you don't have to become cruel just because someone was unfair to you. You don't have to destroy someone just because they hurt you. Sometimes the strongest response is to stay calm, protect what matters, tell the truth, and give people a chance to make things right. As for Linda, She still jokes about the day she evicted the woman who was secretly saving the house. And whenever she tells that story, she always ends with the same sentence. I thought I was protecting my son. I didn't realize I was pushing away the person who had been protecting all of us. And every time I hear it, I smile. Because sometimes, the person everyone overlooks is the person holding everything together.